take it. Action. Cut.
Every now and again, a movie comes along that tries something different. Sometimes this is through script form, like Arrival, or through shooting the entire film in one take, like Victoria. These can be great, but they're quite risky. Sometimes, however, a creative team comes along that doesn't set out to break these rules of traditional storytelling, but instead slightly twist them on their own head for the better.
Doopy, chill!
Over recent years, young adult films have become something of an addiction amongst film studio heads, with movies like The Fault in Our Stars and Love, Simon doing extremely well at the box office for their tiny budgets. Many of these take young adult novel works and adapt them for the screen. For those of you who don't know, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl is a young adult novel adaptation released in 2015 directed by Alfonso Gomez-Rejon. What's unique about Me and Earl within the landscape of young adult films is just how Alfonso tells the story of Greg through a unique visual and narrative lens of Greg's own mind. Alfonso, who learned under none other than Martin Scorsese, used a heavily stylized approach to the visuals of this film. Every decision here was made on purpose by Alfonso for the intent of the story. So let's try to break this down without spoiling the entire film. Me and Earl is all about Greg and thinking through his mind. Mostly, this is expressed through his voiceover narration that litters the film, but much more subtly is how the camera conveys his feelings and emotions at any given time through cinematic framing and blocking. There's a lot to dissect about this use of camera and editing here, but I'm going to specifically focus on scenes showing the key plot points that showcase Greg's character, while mainly focusing on his interactions with Rachel. Immediately we can see Rachel's effect on Greg's life through her introduction shot to the film. Leading up to this point, we've had interesting camera moves that glide around, much like how Greg is attempting to dodge social interactions, and square framing to showcase how Greg has organised his life. But instead, Rachel shakes this up immediately by halting all of that to a stop in an extremely wide-angle frame. This leads into the more simple conversation between them in their room, where director Alfonso and cinematographer Chung-Hoon Chung sets up one of the key visual storytelling devices of the film, its use of negative space. Now, if you've seen the film, you understand the significance of these scissors in the background that serve as a key plot point of Rachel's character towards the end of the film. But first, let's break down the individual setups used for this sequence. I'm quickly going to mention how it's cutting closer as both characters start to relate and become comfortable with each other, just so we can strike out these shots and focus on the dialogue reverses. Now this is where it actually starts to get interesting. This last frame on Rachel actually highlights those scissors, slightly out of focus, while feeling like some odd negative space framing. The audience at this point has no idea of their relevance to her character. If you also look at all the shots in the sequence, we can see that every single shot has been specifically leading up to this moment, this reveal of the scissors on the wall, including doing the complete opposite on Greg's reverse, where the background is completely flat and detailless, only emphasizing Rachel's side framing more. And Alfonso uses this device of negative space conversational framing, initially used here just to foreshadow an object, throughout the entire film. Further into the film, Rachel's condition worsens, all while Greg continues to have even less of an idea of what he wants to do and how he wants to live his life. Here, the visual idea of using negative space is continued, but used to represent something completely different. Instead of being a device for foreshadowing, it is used to strengthen the character's current emotional states. Greg, as stated before, is not putting much thought into his future and attempting to completely avoid discussion of planning and breaking out of his organised high school life, whereas Rachel is beginning to question if she truly wants to continue treatment for her cancer, and therefore separating herself from tradition with Greg.
Those shots mean something rather than the medium. Oh yeah,
medium. It becomes about math at that, but at some point it becomes about the left side of my brain, which I don't have.
Yeah.
By this point of the film, you've witnessed some of the best and worst parts of Greg and Rachel's friendships, leading to this scene that fractures all of that apart. Shot in a single take at a wide angle similar to their first meeting, you begin to feel a separation between the characters while you are sitting there in the room witnessing this event. What really lends this scene its impact from its visual storytelling is the lead up to it. As the film progresses, you start to get into its rhythm of editing, shot style, and situational blocking. Before this shot is a montage of Rachel coming home from hospital and hanging out with Greg in various states of emotion. The audience is led to believe that this shot will cut away eventually, following this montage format, to something we are more used to, like the negative conversational framing of the start, which obviously doesn't happen here. On my first watch of this movie years ago, I didn't even notice that it didn't cut away. I was just there, sitting in the room with these characters, being truly impacted by it.
If she's on the left of frame, reclining, and he's on the right, there are no cuts. I could swear there are cuts. I could swear there are movement. I could swear there's movement there. Yeah. Or when you frame people on the left or right, 2, 3, 5 frame is negative space and everything. It holds something pretty strong and emotional.
Greg has just found out that Rachel wants to forego further treatment, and after that has a fight with his best friend, co-worker, his best friend Earl, which obviously leaves him in a very emotional state. Up to this point in the film, Greg has also struggled with making a personal film for Rachel, and with both being unable to do this and the recent fracture in their friendship, even more emotional baggage is added to his character. Mr. McCarthy, a teacher of his at high school, attempts to console him, understanding the stress of his situation and being one of the only people that Greg confides in. Attempting to comfort Greg, McCarthy opens up to him with a story about the loss of his own father and how that even after you lose someone, their life can keep unfolding to you, learning new things about their personality. Through a zoom in that continues across reverse shots of both characters, we can feel Greg attempt to comfort himself. The scene is so simple, yet effective, especially with an unnamed piece of score by Brian Eno that brings a somber tone together brilliantly. Talking about music, this is The Big Ship, also by Brian Eno, and it works... Sorry, just needed to get that foreshadowing out of the way. And it works wonders for not being too emotionally manipulative while also having the grandeur to fill the room, which is exactly what this situation needs. Greg is visiting Rachel in hospital on their prom night to show her the film he has been making her this entire time. It is a big moment for his character, and the simplicity of the filmmaking only helps to amplify the emotions being presented.
The hospital sequence I had storyboarded so carefully in pre-production, but by the time we got to that scene, I had changed.
Yeah.
And I realized that my approach was completely wrong and too stylized, and it was just about being still and holding on their faces, and it was quite. I know. But there was a whole something you couldn't plan, which is the life of the flare on the lens that you can't plan for that.
No, of course not.
Or the colors that were bouncing off the wall and the reds and the blues, so you could be still.
Greg has finally altered his outlook on life after his hardships and completed this film that represents his love for Rachel, while allowing us closer into him than we have ever been before. But this moment comes too late as Rachel's sickness interrupts the pristine solo soundtrack. As her mother and nurses run in, Rachel allows herself a moment to lock eyes with her mother to say goodbye, before returning to the screen now blocked by Greg, allowing him to fall into the world of the film while Rachel looks in his direction one last time, tearing up over the feeling she has developed for him. In conclusion, me and Earl... Wait, scratch that. We've got one more thing to talk about.
Hey, Madison.
Hey, how was your summer?
Let's lighten the mood up here at the end with another female relationship Greg has throughout the film. His friendship with the, quote, hot girl Madison.
Titties.
Whenever Madison is introduced to a scene, generally it's through physical contact with Greg on a shot that glides and sneaks up behind him. Before their true interaction, we get a fancy little stop-motion animated piece detailing the situation. However, as Greg's situation worsens throughout the movie, his attitude towards Madison's sudden appearances changes, which is also highly evident within the animated segments. From getting crushed at the beginning, to dodging the crushing foot when Greg is attempting to dodge his responsibilities of life even more at the end of the film.
What is this?
These are not so much story-heavy uses of stop-motion imagery, but instead are a brief look into the mind of Greg and how he perceives the interactions with the people around him.
How was your summer? Summer? What does that word even mean? Like more, some?
Even though this film is a wonderful masterclass in visual storytelling, it has had one of the lowest box office grossings out of any young adult novel adaptation ever. And this is coming off the back of a truly great Sundance Film Festival run, where it won both the audience and grand jury awards in 2015. This film continues to teach me new things about visual storytelling every time I watch it. It's almost exactly like what Mr. McCarthy says to Greg in his speech at the end of the film. That even after something ends, you can continue learning about it. It can keep unfolding itself to you, just as long as you pay attention to it. Hey guys, Jayden here. Thank you for watching my first video essay. Camera's about to die, so I better wrap this up quickly. It's been a long time coming. It's a bit rough around the edges, but I plan to make a lot more, so my technique will grow over time. If you want to see more, comment, like, subscribe down below, whatever. Follow me on Twitter at Jayden Bev. I'm currently a VFX artist working full-time in the industry on some pretty cool secret movies, so I'm not going to be making these at the pace that some people doing this full-time might, but I still want to get one out every month or so. Thanks guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you want to continue seeing more of these, and I'll see you in the next one.